Live, it's the Inside Scoop, Virginia. All the news Virginians want to know. Here's your host, political insider, George Burke.
Good evening. Welcome to Inside Scoop, Virginia. We're going to have a slightly different show tonight. We're not going to talk about politics. We're going to talk about lung cancer. I have two guests on who are involved in the issue. I'll get to them in a moment. But let me just make a couple of points first. There's lots of money that's spent and research money, et cetera, that's steered to breast cancer. Very admirable, very deserving. Many other types of cancer. But the bastard child of cancers tends to be lung cancer. Why? People say, well, folks are smokers. They deserve what they get. They did it to themselves. But the fact of the matter is, well over half of all victims of lung cancer, folks suffering from lung cancer, in fact, never smoked. Some of them may be secondhand smoke, but there are a lot of other ways that people can contract lung cancer as well. So here to talk about this tonight, right here to my right, is Sammy Hawkins, who's the Director of Operations and Special Projects for the Lung Cancer Alliance in Washington, D.C. And we have someone here, Susan Lawrence, who was diagnosed in January with stage 4 non-small adenocarcinoma lung cancer. Did I get that correct?
Adenocarcinoma
lung cancer. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Why don't you, Sammy, tell us a little bit about Lung Cancer Alliance. My understanding is it's the only organization. I mean, there are a number of different organizations that deal with breast cancer, even with Lou Gehrig's disease and all these other things, but there are not a lot of organizations that deal with lung cancer.
Well, we are special in that the fact that we are the only organization in the nation that is advocating for lung cancer patients and those that are at risk for lung cancer as well. And we are here in Washington, D.C., and we are trying to work with legislators to push an agenda to make the funding equal. And breast cancer has done a phenomenal job of raising money and making Washington understand how much they needed that NIH money. But the fact of the matter is they've done such a fantastic job. For every breast cancer death, there's $23,000 of government money that goes into research. For every lung cancer death, there's $1,400 that goes into research. And it's just not a level playing field. And what we're trying to do is make that more equitable. Lung cancer kills more people, more Americans, than breast, prostate, colon, liver, kidney, melanoma combined. All of those combined. And yet we are the lowest funded cancer. And that has to change. If Washington could crack this nut, this is an epidemic. If Washington could crack this nut, then we would have a public health rise. And that's what we're trying to do. And we have new legislation just introduced with Senator Hagel and Senator Feinstein that will address this. And we would love to talk about that tonight.
Yeah, and we'll certainly get into that more. What kind of money is available for lung cancer research? I mean, what's the magnitudes of the money? Do you have any numbers that
the magic number is $1,400 per lung cancer death, and we've got 162,000 people dying every year. We have twice as many women dying of lung cancer than breast cancer. We have 3 times as many men dying from lung cancer than prostate cancer, and we have $1,400. NIH, for all the phenomenal work that they have done in so many areas, and kudos to them, they have not addressed lung cancer. When Nixon called his war on lung cancer in 1971, everybody basically was going through the same kind of mortality, 15%, pretty much across the board. Now, breast cancer has an 88% survival rate, and prostate has a 99% survival rate, and colon is 92%. Lung cancer is still back there at 15% for 5 years. And that is totally equitable with the amount of money that has been given toward this. We have got to influx the money into lung cancer research so we could get these young doctors to want to do this. Nobody wants to do this because there's no money for them to do it. And so we have to, give this transfusion.
Is it is part of it because of the so-called stigma? Is part of it because they say the tobacco companies should be throwing money into this thing? What's the...
And the tobacco companies, the master settlement agreement, millions of dollars were given to this with the master settlement agreement, and very, very little. It was all given to the states, and very few states put any money toward lung cancer. A lot of great smoking prevention, smoking cessation programs are going on. We're doing a great job with that. But as far as research for lung cancer, and yes, quite frankly, it comes down to the stigma. People really believe that if you brought it on yourself, you did this to yourself. Well, that's a little unfair. First of all, if tobacco disappeared today, we'd still have 80 years of this coming along. Not to mention those 15% of people, it's actually a stat that you threw out earlier, it's actually 60% of the people that are diagnosed today don't smoke. And some of about 40% quit, did the right thing, quit when they got pregnant, quit when they learned, that this was bad for them, did the right thing and were told that their lungs would recover, and that's not necessarily true. But 15% of people have never smoked. And what is going on with that? It can't all be secondhand. Is it radon? What is it? We don't know because there's no research. And it does come back to the stigma almost every time of the pushback of if they didn't do it to themselves, there wouldn't be this problem, and that's just simply not true.
But there are a lot of different types of activities that people do to themselves. If they didn't work around asbestos, they wouldn't have asbestosis.
Absolutely.
If they didn't do intravenous drugs, they wouldn't have hepatitis C. If they didn't do this or that, they wouldn't have such and such a disease.
And
why is it so different with lung cancer?
When you throw that stigma out there, the one group of people that really angers me is the veterans. Veterans have a 25% higher risk of having lung cancer. And they'll all tell you, we have our newest board member is Norman Mineta, Secretary Norman Mineta, who is a 5-year lung cancer survivor, and he tells the story that, in the Army they made me pay for coffee, but they gave me my cigarettes for free. But not only the smoking was part of the culture back then, but look at what they've had to deal with. Agent Orange, asbestos in submarines. Our board president just passed away, a fine man, Rear Admiral Cody, and fine man, never smoked a day in his life, but lived his life on submarines around that asbestos, and he lost his battle just mere weeks ago, and we're devastated at that loss. And but the veterans, at least acknowledge this, that these people served our country, they came out of it, they are at risk now, let's serve them back.
Well, firefighters, I spent many years working with firefighters, and firefighters suffer all different forms of cancer, including lung cancer. And quite frankly, today's firefighters, very few of them smoke. In the old days, people used to say, how can they smoke after they go in and eat the smoke? But that was, again, part of the culture at that point.
Right.
Now they've changed that culture. But this is some very interesting stuff, and I think what you're doing is admirable. Let's turn to Susan a little bit. Tell us your story, if you would.
Well, I was diagnosed in January. Not really any symptoms. I had shortness of breath probably for 2 years. Of course, I was a former smoker as well. And every time I went to the doctor, they'd blame it on asthma, or they'd blame it on, if I had a backache, they'd blame it on soft tissue muscle pull. And so this went on for a couple of years, and you trust the doctors, so you believe them, and you also think you're too young for cancer. Well, in November of '07, there was a lump on my neck, and at first I thought it was stress. Went to the doctor. She said, again, soft muscle pull. That was her excuse for everything. After a few weeks, when it wouldn't go away, I insisted that I have tests done, and finally she did send me for a CAT scan and found out it was lung cancer. Now, a person I had met through the LCA board, who was 15 years older than me, went to the same practice. They caught hers immediately because she was 15 years older, so they took her more serious, thinking younger people don't get lung cancer, which is wrong. I've met people on the LCA board, 26 years old, 34 years old, all with lung cancer.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The numbers are getting younger and younger. I lost my husband. He was diagnosed at 39 years old. However, we were sharing the story earlier. When he was 36, he broke a rib. They saw a spot. They told him, oh, it's nothing, it's histoplasmosis, you know, go live your life. It was lung cancer if it had been caught then. But they dismiss that idea that young people can get lung cancer, and what we're seeing is that a lot of non-smoking, healthy people are getting lung cancer. We had a young girl die recently that was part of our community who was 19 years old. And it is happening younger and younger, and we all have to be aware of this.
Certainly, I think that some of us have genetic disposition to cancers, different types of cancers. I think that's basically a medical fact these days. Because of things with my father, I have to go through certain tests, et cetera, on a regular basis for cancer. And my mother died of lung cancer at 50 herself, and it was the same thing. She had backaches.
That's very common.
Complained of backaches, and by the time they actually figured it out, now granted, this is many years ago now, the science has improved, but it doesn't sound like it's improved that much other than the technology, because there's not a lot of money put into the research. But it ultimately metastasized, and it metastasized all over the place, and then it was really too late to do anything. I don't want to get into too much detail on the bill because we're going to be breaking in about a minute and a half. But how are you getting received on Capitol Hill?
Oh, it's interesting. It was quite the, well, last year we had a resolution passed unanimously by the Senate that lung cancer should be a national health priority, and that's what this bill has been based on. Received, it's interesting, Debbie Stabenow out of Michigan signed on. She's a co-sponsor. The pushback that we're getting is we don't want to identify or support a body part cancer. We don't want to say breast or prostate or colon or lung. We want to love all cancers equally, which would be fantastic if that was the way the world worked. But this is not equal, and all we're asking is to catch up. And all this bill asks is for us to start where breast cancer did about 20 years ago with $75 million.
Again, how are you getting a decent reception on the House side and a decent reception from the leadership? Oh,
absolutely, we are. But it is interesting about the ones that are pushing back are talking about being equal, and it's just simply not equal.
I'm going to want to come back to that. Thank you for watching. We're talking about lung cancer today. You can call us at 571-749-1166. And we will be back in 2 minutes. So please stay with us and feel free to call.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America. Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
Once again, George Burke with the Inside Scoop, Virginia.
Welcome back. We're talking about lung cancer today. We have Sammy Hawkins of the Lung Cancer Alliance, the only group that's dedicated to seeking funding for research for lung cancer issues, and Susan Lawrence, who herself is a survivor so far of lung cancer. Let's get right into this bill. You folks pushed for the introduction of a bill to establish a comprehensive interagency response to reduce lung cancer mortality in a timely manner. S3187 it is. Tell me about it.
It's historic. It is the first ever legislation that has ever been introduced that specifically targets lung cancer, and it's a long time coming. What we're asking is that the Department of Defense, the Veterans Administration, and Health and Human Services each do line items within their budgets that address lung cancer specifically. Now, we all know that NIH doubled their funding a couple of years ago, and we were very excited about that. However, none of that money ended up coming to us and to lung cancer patients, and I shouldn't say none, that's very little of that money ended up going to lung cancer research. And so now we have to step it up a little bit. We're gonna step it up, and all we're asking for, like I said earlier, is that we're asking for a level playing field here, and we're not even trying to make it level, we're asking what started breast cancer research. $75 million is what started breast cancer research, government money, breast cancer research back in the day, and look how far it's come now. Now you have survivors that are walking for days at a time and talking more about it, and it's just unstoppable, and they have done beautiful things for these people, and that's all we want. We want that kind of commitment from the government. Again, this hits more of our senators' constituents than any other cancer combined, and if they will just commit to this, then this will make a difference in public health across the board.
How big is your staff? I mean, what type of activities are you able to conduct from the Lung Cancer Alliance?
We have a staff of 8, and they are the most committed, beautiful people. I moved here from Michigan. I volunteered during my husband's illness and after my husband's death. I volunteered for them in Michigan, and then they brought me on here. There's not one person in our office that has not been touched personally by lung cancer, and they work tirelessly every day to get this done. But we have a couple of staff members that have extensive experience on the Hill, that came from the Hill, and they know their way around, and they know how to do this. And they've actually drafted this legislation that Hagel and Feinstein signed on to, and they peeled the potato in a very different way. Instead of asking straight money from the Congress, we're asking for these different entities to line item it. And it's not as onerous that way to the budgets.
And obviously you got to get your authorization through so you can then try to get it actually into real money from any appropriations process. Susan, I understand that you have mounted I want to find out how you folks met, but that I'm looking at this and it looks like that you've mounted your own one-woman lobbying campaign here.
I'm trying to, because it just bothers me when I mean, even before I had lung cancer, I didn't realize, A, that non-smokers could get lung cancer, that young people could get lung cancer. You think of lung cancer and you think of an old man smoker. You don't really think of people of all ages. And then when I was diagnosed, I wasn't taken serious, for one. Even when I went to get my CAT scan to find out I had lung cancer, the technician said, "What are you here for?" And I said, "Well, we think I may have lung cancer." She's, "Yeah, right, everybody says that." And she started laughing. Nobody takes it serious for if you're not, you know, in your 60s, 70s, 80s. So I just wanted people to start realizing that it can affect them. I think the only way we're going to ever get a movement or get funding for it is if people realize that it could happen to you. I didn't think it would happen to me. I mean, I did smoke, and I thought, well, yeah, maybe when I'm 70, but that's 20 years from now. And that wasn't the case, and I think people need to realize that it could happen to them.
So you were diagnosed in January.
Right.
If you don't mind, can you tell us basically what you've been through in that period of time?
Well, I mean, I have to admit that it hasn't been as bad as I thought it was. I mean, I thought chemo, you think of chemo, you think you're going to be vomiting and laying in bed and bedridden, and it's really not like that at all. They have so many good drugs now to help with nauseousness, and so it's not bad. I think anybody should go through it. There's so many people that are afraid to go through it, and there's really not anything to be afraid of. Most people can tolerate it now. But I did have to quit work.
And you were
I was an event planner, and I traveled a lot. And now I'm really can't travel because, well, two reasons is cancer causes blood clots, chemo causes blood clots, and then flying causes blood clots. So that was one reason. Chemo does make you fatigued, or cancer. I'm not really sure which it is, but I couldn't even imagine working a full-time job now. It's just, I feel like the stamina that I used to have is cut in half. It's different, but I am trying to focus my energy on things that I can do, and that's trying to promote lung cancer awareness. I know that when I was distributing some of these flyers to businesses, I went door to door, and so many times I got the question, "Do you smoke?" So instead of saying I did smoke, or I just come out with, you know, you don't need to smoke to get lung cancer, because people think if you smoked, you deserve it, and nobody deserves cancer, no matter what it is. So I think I got irritated. I got angry that people think any human being deserves any kind of cancer.
I notice on here that you have different people of different ages, pictures of people, and it's very interesting. Some of these people are in their 30s, and one looks like he's 28.
26, yeah.
26, sometimes my eyes don't focus on the small letters. When we were off camera talking during the break, one of the things that you mentioned is that you had gotten some pushback out of some Senate offices.
Well, but I had obviously posted this everywhere, sent it to all my friends, coworkers, everyone I could think of, and a lot of them who did receive replies received a blanket reply basically about the NIH cancer funding, period. That was it. Not, and a few senators, actually someone posted it on your board, where they mentioned cancers by name in response to this, and lung cancer was still not mentioned. So it's, yeah, it's people, it's the invisible cancer. People don't want to deal with it.
Have you done any door-to-door lobbying yourself on the Hill? Have you been up there at all?
No, that's where I can't do that. That's where I draw the line. I'd rather do it.
We'll get her up there.
I said I'd never do anything like this, so you never know. But yeah, I mean, I'd rather deal with people like us, just normal, everyday people, bringing awareness, because I really think those are the people who can do the most good.
Well, the reality of the matter is the politicians are like us. They just happen to be living legends in their own
well, exactly.
as well.
And, right, that's exactly right. But yeah, I just think we need to make more noise.
Yeah, and we, please, if you could, if any person watching this could, go to www.lungcanceralliance.org, click the button. It's a very simple process to just write a standard response to your senator and ask him to support this bill. No matter what zip code you live in, it will walk you straight through it, and the more letters they get, the better it is when we finally get a meeting and walk in and we know, you know, by the way, we know that 200 people have already emailed you, and you need to respond to your constituents.
So this bill was literally only introduced in, it looks like in June.
Right, it was about a month ago.
And obviously it takes some time. It looks to me, I suspect you'll have to have the bill reintroduced at the beginning. I worked on the Hill for a number of years. You'll have to have the bill reintroduced at the beginning of the next Congress, but certainly it's the time to build support and build awareness.
We have to shore up the support right now.
And I don't think there's any doubt that the best way to get members of Congress, whether they're in the House or the Senate, to get on a bill is to, light a fire underneath their backsides. Mm-hmm. And the more people you get to call and the more people you get to press them, the more, and particularly when they go home, you get people in their congressional districts and in their states who see them at home, to press them is where you're going to hit sort of some of the right buttons. But is there a companion bill in the House at this point?
Not at this point. We are getting ready to introduce that. We should be able to introduce that within the next week, we're hoping.
Do you have, are you at liberty to suggest who may be the sponsors of that in the House?
I'm not at liberty at this point.
Yeah, I understand. You don't want to step on their moment of glory to introduce this piece of legislation, because that's what it's ultimately all about there. I'm looking at your what I want to talk about in the next segment. I'm looking at a couple of pages from your website, and you have a lot of stuff here. You have an information line, you have obviously your website, you have a phone buddy program, you have a lung cancer clinical trials matching service, you have an online survivors community. It looks like you have a quarterly newsletter.
Yes, we, and I have to say that, again, and I'm sure that Susan can back me up on this, when my husband was diagnosed, and he wasn't the activist you were, I ended up being, doing all the research, and then that, this website, this organization was the only place I could find any real information, and one of the first places I found it was Lung Cancer in the News. And the different parts that they offered us changed our lives.
That's www.lungcanceralliance.org. Interesting site. You ought to take a look at it. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
This is firstgov.gov, where we're obsessed with getting you government information.
Brand new student loan applications on the site, baby. This calls for a celebration. Where's your uncle?
So in the end, it was either take the astronaut gig or come work here. What can I say? Duty called.
Dude, that's my cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure that's Sam's cop.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No. Sam's. No.
Just log on or email us and get what you need.
C, change of address form. That's how it's done. D, driver's license renewal.
E, emailing Social Security information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice, we'll allow it. All right, Ed. What are those?
Government surplus cars for auction.
You posted those online last time.
No, you did.
I'm posting them online this time!
For all your government information, firstgov.gov.
Oh, what have we got here? Sometimes you feel tired. You can't seem to lose those extra pounds off your midsection. And your joints hurt when you take the stairs? Well, you're getting older. But I'm happy to say that there's some simple things we can do to keep you happy and healthy for years to come. We can also lower your risk for some serious diseases the older population is often subject to. Proper nutrition is more important than ever. Your body has changed, not as many treats. A basic exercise plan, lots of walks and fresh air, and most importantly, come and see me for twice-yearly checkups to help ensure the best possible quality of life. Now, how does that sound? Good boy.
Improve the quality of life for your elderly pet. Schedule twice-yearly checkups that include preventive care and regular lab work.
Yeah.
A message from the veterinary members of the American Animal Hospital Association.
And then whatever you leave off on.
Once again, George Burke with the Inside Scoop, Virginia.
Welcome back. We're talking about the Lung Cancer Alliance. We're talking about the fact that there is nowhere near the amount of federal research money for lung cancer that there are for many other kinds of cancers, whether it's breast, whether it's colon, whether it's prostate, etc. The disparity in the money, $26,000, I think you said. $23,000 per breast cancer survivor or person who comes down with breast cancer versus $1,400 for someone who comes down with lung cancer. I have Sammy Hawkins, the Director of Operations and Special Projects for the Lung Cancer Alliance, and Susan Lawrence, who herself is a lung cancer survivor and still very much going through treatment and the like. We were talking about the organization, and you had said that when your husband came down with lung cancer, that this was the only place you had to reach out to.
It was the only place, and between the lung cancer in the news, which I would go to every single day, and it would talk about new drugs or this or that, and I would gather this information and take it to the doctor, and what about this, what about this, what about this? And lung cancer, and Susan can tell you, you have to be your own advocate, and you have to like out know what these doctors know. You have to go in there and know what the next thing is. And the best thing that we got out of this was the clinical trial matching service. What lung cancer patient, well, any cancer patient really needs to know is that, especially lung cancer, maybe the things that the FDA has approved so far, that may not save you, but it could be that drug in the pipeline that's coming up that could save you, and you need to research the clinical trials, find out what will work for you, what is in your area, or what you might be willing to travel to, and put yourself in a clinical trial, because that is where the answer is, and that is where the hope is. And people need to understand that. It's very hard to navigate. We have the clinical trial matching service to where we can match you up, the type of cancer you have, where it's metastasized to, what you're eligible for, and give you a list of what your options are. And that bought us time. And I'll forever be grateful for that.
Susan, talk to us a little bit about how you hooked up with this organization.
Well, basically, when I was first diagnosed, I Googled lung cancer, and this was an organization that came up, and I started reading the discussion boards and just read that so many people out there were in the same situation I was, and started participating in it, and it's just been so helpful to me. It's like a second family. I mean, the people on this discussion board are so helpful, and they're so caring. And it's just a family. It's just great. In fact, I've actually met a couple of people in person through this board because everyone generally cares about each other. They help you, they give advice, or they just support you. If you want to vent, they're there to let you vent. It's a pretty awesome group of people. And truly, I didn't even know about the clinical trial match until just this minute. But it's good. Because really, the only thing I've really participated in was this discussion board. But now I'm going to have to actually go back and see what else you have to offer.
Yeah, we can hook you up.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
We also have a phone buddy program where if you need more than the online support, we can match type for type and stage for stage another buddy that is a survivor, and they will help walk you through if you need that phone buddy personal intercommunication. And then we have two fantastic social workers that's all they do all day is take phone calls. I've just been diagnosed, or what do I do about this, or what do I do about that? And they literally will walk you through personally. There's no other organization that does for lung cancer what this organization does.
How are you funded? I don't want to go into great detail, but is it donations? Mm-hmm. Is it
over 50% are private donations? The $25, $30, $100. We also do to fund, for example, our Phone Buddy program. It might be a pharmaceutical that will give us a grant for that. We are working hand in hand with American Legacy Foundation right now, working on a program to help current lung cancer survivors stop smoking. Turns out that is a big nut to crack. Nicotine is a horrible addiction that is very hard to kick. And even in the face of a diagnosis, even in the face of being told, this will hurt your chemo, this is going to hurt your chances, this is going to stand in the way of whether you live or die, people still have trouble stopping smoking. And American Legacy and we are working together to try to figure out a prevention and cessation package.
They say that nicotine is more addictive than heroin or alcohol.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so it's no surprise sometimes that that people have the addiction. It's very hard to kick. There's no doubt about it. I think sometimes you get into the chemo, you can be too sick to keep smoking.
Right.
But it's amazing sometimes. I mean, I've fought it for years myself in terms of the smoking addiction. So you've got some foundations that provide some money, but a lot of it are small contributions from people. I mean, you don't do a telethon.
Nope.
You don't do. How do they find out about
It's
you?
word of mouth. It's the community. It's word of mouth, and it's who we've helped. And these people will do their own fundraiser for us to get awareness out. Something around. I'm really angry about this, and I'm going to get this word out, and I'm going to have a benefit or something, and they give the money to us just because they're angry and they want people to understand and they want the awareness. And we have a fantastic community of lung cancer survivors, the best ever.
Susan, I've had a little experience with cancer, and one of the things I've learned personally and through friends of mine is a lot of it. I mean, certainly there's the physical part of it, but the best way to get through it and presumably beat it is attitude.
Right.
I mean, you have to have an attitude. You have to have a goal. I have one friend who just says pointedly, I'm too young to die.
Right.
And he has a very serious form of cancer. I don't want to discuss too much because I don't want to invade his privacy. But that was how he described it to me. I'm too young to die, so I'm not going to die. And he's gone through some living hell in the process, but he just keeps walking and talking. How do you find that?
Well, I mean, that's what I try to be the same way. I'm too young to die, and who knows? Anytime I speak to someone who gets down or says, how do you have this attitude? It's like, you don't know what's right around the corner. A cure can be right around the corner. You just have to keep hanging in and deal with it. We're all strong. We don't get a whole lot that we can't handle. And you just deal with it because life's too precious not to.
I think your flyer that you've created, it's quite classy. It's on photo paper, and the whole thing is pretty exceptional. Why don't you hold it up and see if we can get one of the cameras to zero in on that a little bit. This is, this was not in conjunction with the Lung Cancer Alliance, and this is something you started on your own.
Well, I started it, but some of the nice people at the Lung Cancer Alliance, I had talked about the poster, wanting to do the poster, and I had all the information, and next thing you know, I get an email from someone saying, my wife's a graphic designer, she can design it for you, send her the information, she'll design it, which I did. Then I looked up to see if there was a website called www.helplungcancer.com, and there wasn't, so I posted that it sure would be nice to have that website so people could go to that website instead of the long address of, just write the senators. Next thing I know, someone from the community, the Lung Cancer Alliance community, says, well, I do that for a living. I'll register it for you, and he put all the information up. So people really help a lot. It's just, I started it, but a lot of people have joined in to help me.
Is there, you have the means to just an online community, you have the potential through this organization to have a phone buddy or such. Is there the possibility, we live in a metropolitan area here that I'm sure there's a lot of people who are suffering from lung cancer given the statistics. Is it a worthwhile endeavor to try and do some kind of a literally, I don't want to call it a club, but a group that would get together on a regular basis? Is that something that you would welcome, or is that something that would end up being more of a hassle than it's worth?
No, I think it would be good. There are support groups now. In fact, somebody else from LCA, one of Sammy's co-workers, Amy, actually introduced me to a support group. And I think it's a great thing. I think that more people need to be aware of it.
Right. And we are going to be in the spring doing an advocacy conference for our advocates around the nation, and bringing in a group of people and talking about this bill and taking it to the Hill and having them speak directly to their senators and their representatives, and teaching them, you know, on a one-to-one basis how to advocate and how to lobby.
Tell us more about that, a little bit more. When is it? What's the, you know, there may be some folks watching this now or seeing it in the coming weeks. It'll end up on some blogs, it'll end up...
Absolutely. You know, the date has not been set in stone, but we're looking at the spring, and we're looking to bring in about 50 advocates, the most active advocates out there, to teach them, you know, how to specifically go lobby for this on Capitol Hill, take it back to their state, lobby for it back in the state, and to get that grassroots. And that's what we really need, is the grassroots movements within each of the states to grow and become bigger, and to help us over here in Washington, because 8 people here in Washington can't do it alone. It has to go back to the states, and it has to be them talking to their senators, talking to their reps.
It's almost like creating state chapters
Absolutely.
of the Lung Cancer Alliance, which, you know, the experience I've had with grassroots lobbying and lobbying efforts, I think that would certainly be the way to go. When we return, one of the things I want to talk about is National Lung Cancer Awareness Month. This is an annual thing, I take it.
Yes.
It's not a one-shot deal. And I want to talk about that. And I want to talk a little bit more about your public awareness campaign. How much do you reach out now? How much public relations? I mean, do you pay for public relations, or is it something you just, again, it sounds to me like a lot of it's word of mouth.
It is word of mouth.
Do you get much media interest?
Unfortunately, you know, it's not the sexiest of stories to pitch, and we try to get stories in national magazines and in national publications, and unfortunately that really hasn't happened yet. It's not as sexy a story as breast or colon, but we're getting there, and the more we get people to understand, just like what she has here, if you think you can't get lung cancer because you don't smoke, think again. Once we start getting the public to realize that everyone is at risk, then I think that will naturally come.
You hear that? You're all at risk. So we shall return in 2 minutes with Susan and with Sammy, and we'll wrap this thing up and give you a couple of ideas on what you can do to help combat lung cancer, and more importantly, to help find a cure. We'll be back.
Too many women get hit by their boyfriends and husbands. Too many women are pressured into having unprotected sex. Half of the people in the world living with AIDS are women. It doesn't have to be this way. Together, we can change this reality. Let's strive for a world free of violence.
At Volunteers of America, we don't just give kids a way to stay off the streets. We give them the tools they need to reach their full potential. We don't just help the elderly receive needed care. We help them live life to the fullest. We don't just provide food for homeless individuals and families. We provide job training and placement so they can buy groceries. Volunteers of America is a national organization that for over 100 years has provided programs and services that allow people to overcome their challenges to become vital members of their community. At Volunteers of America, we don't just help people, we help people help themselves. Find out how you can support the programs that are working in your community. Contact Volunteers of America today. Call 1-800-899-0089.
Drivers face all kinds of distractions.
Guys, stop playing, no?
127 consecutive. Before your wireless phone becomes one of them, stop. Drive safely. Keep your phone in easy reach and dial sensibly. In bad weather or traffic, call later and use a hands-free device. Remember, with wireless, safety is your call.
Once again, George Burke with the Inside Scoop, Virginia.
Welcome back. We're talking about lung cancer. I have Sammy and Susan with me. Susan, one of the things we talked about at the break was that there is a pushback, as you described it, for early screening of lung cancer.
Right. I think that when you go to a doctor, they don't take you serious, for one, especially your age. And then the other thing is, a lot of times, since I've been diagnosed, family members want to know if they should be screened. And the doctors tell them, well, a CAT scan is more dangerous for you than not, just to get it for screening. So, I mean, what really needs to happen is have a safe screening developed.
The position that Lung Cancer Alliance takes on early screening, that the technology is certainly there. And for a number of reasons, there's been some pushback within the medical community. However, this is the same argument that they had with mammograms all these years ago. So we think we're on the right track. You know, at least we're having the same kind of arguments.
Although I will say, all of a sudden they are suggesting that a lot of the screening for prostate cancer be pushed back or pushed aside. Their argument there is that sometimes the treatment is worse than getting the cancer because it's such a slow-growing cancer, unlike lung cancer, unlike colon cancer and some others, breast cancer.
But our position is, if you are over 55 years old, if you have a 10-pack history, which means you smoked a pack a day for 10 years, or you smoked 2 packs a day for 5 years, whatever that averages out to, if you have a 10-pack history, you should talk to your physician about a screening. There have been studies that have shown that if you are found at stage 1, you have a 92% survival rate as opposed to the 15% that people enjoy now. If you are diagnosed today with lung cancer, you have a 15% chance of being alive in 5 years. If it's found in stage 1 and resected, you have a 92% chance of being alive 10 years from now.
Now, explain what resected is for
surgery. Surgery. And so, again, it's controversial. We can image the lungs. A lung biopsy is a different animal than a breast biopsy, honestly, and you can image the lungs and you can see a lot of things in there that might not be lung cancer. And so then you would have to wait to see if it grows, see if the images change. And a lot of physicians feel like that's a lot of pressure for a patient to sit and wait for 3 months and go, do I have lung cancer? Don't I have lung cancer? My argument is, I wish that my husband had been given that chance to be screened and wait for 3 months, and I would have taken that 3 months of hell to be able to have him now. I think it's worth it, but that's just my personal opinion. But we believe at the Lung Cancer Alliance, if you are 55 years old, if you have a 10-pack history, you should talk to your physician about getting a screening.
Now, I read something a couple of years ago that the latest, and maybe it was even less than that the latest and greatest thing for detecting lung cancer at an early stage was what they call a spiral.
That's right. That's what we're talking about. It's a 64-slice spiral CT. And that is what has been used in the studies that have shown the 92%
cure rate. I hope I'm not going beyond your medical knowledge, but what's the difference between that and a conventional CAT scan?
The conventional CAT scan is a 32 slice, and so just basically slicing the image into 32, and this one is a 64, so it gets a better picture of what's going on, and it can detect the growth in a different way.
So a regular CAT scan is still sort of a spiral type of thing. It's not that it's...
And that's great too. I mean, that would be fantastic too if there was any kind of screening in place. That would, especially for, again, going back to the veterans, especially for veterans. We've put them in situations for our country where they have been exposed to carcinogens, and now we're doing nothing to help them survive. It's deplorable.
My late father-in-law died of cancer, and he was a sergeant and a mechanic in the Air Force. And they used, I can't remember the substance, but whatever substance they used during World War II and afterwards, he was a lifer, to clean the grease off of their arms and hands. Now it's like prohibited for anything, and it's a cancer-causing agent. Back then they didn't know any better, and ultimately it killed them. It's science changes all the time. How many years ago did your husband die?
It'll be 3 years this December.
So science hasn't changed too much in 3 years. No. Has anything changed?
I think awareness has changed. Or at least for the people around me, this is all I talk about. But I think awareness is changing, and I think that people like Susan, and this is why she's so special, there are more people like Susan that are willing to come out and own it, where in years before, if you got lung cancer, you're not going to talk about it, I'm not going to admit it, I'll lie, I'll say I've got something else, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get blamed. But for people like her to come here, stand up, own it, be angry about it, and she is determined that this is going to change, and that's what we need, and that's what I'm seeing more of.
Have you folks ever approached the tobacco industry about providing funding to your organization?
No, we would not take tobacco money, no. That was a decision that was made very early on, that we wouldn't take tobacco money.
Do you have any connection or dealings with some of these organizations that are anti-tobacco? I can't remember, there's one specifically about children against coalition to stop children from smoking or something. I can't remember. They've been around for years, because when I was on the Hill they were.
I don't know that one specifically. I know we worked very tightly with American Legacy Foundation, who was founded, their whole budget is founded on the tobacco settlement money. So we work very closely with them.
But very little of it, as you said earlier, has made it into the pipeline for research.
No, I mean, the states got billions of dollars with that settlement money, and most of it has gone back into infrastructure, into rebuilding roads, and if it did go into anything, it went into smoking cessation programs, but nothing with research and nothing to actually help the people that were inflicted with this disease.
I'm going to ask you both the same question, as we only have a few minutes left in the program, and I'll start with Susan. What would be your advice to people who maybe this program has piqued their interest? What would you tell our viewers in terms of what they can do to help, what they can do from your perspective of somebody at the grassroots level? What can they do to help this cause?
Well, I think the first thing is not to blame anybody. That cancer is cancer. It doesn't matter if you got it from smoking. It doesn't matter if you got it from radon. It doesn't matter how you got it. Cancer is cancer, and don't make people be embarrassed for having it. Because until people can take a stand and say, I have lung cancer no matter what I did, it is going to be an invisible cancer. So I think that's the first thing, is it's just don't blame. I think that's the big thing. And then I just think people need to push their physicians and don't take no for an answer. If you think something's wrong, you need to push them and get the tests, and don't let your medical care be run by the insurance companies. I mean, I think that's a big thing.
I want to ask you the same question, Sammy, but also I want to touch upon one of the things that Susan said. How do you push your physician? You know, what resources do you use?
I think you need a big mouth. You just need to. I mean, it took me a while to realize that they didn't always know what they were talking about, and it's my life, it's my body, and it's my health. And I had to push, and I had to yell, and finally they did send me for tests, but it took a while. It wasn't easy, but the squeaky wheel does get the grease.
She's absolutely right. She's absolutely right. You have to be your own advocate. You have to walk. You have to do your homework. You have to walk in there and know, first of all, just because they're standing in a white coat does not mean that is the best place for you. You always would want to get a second opinion, and it doesn't matter if you hurt their feelings. And if you actually hurt that doctor's feelings by asking for a second opinion, you know you're in the wrong place. And going from a local community hospital, which might be the place that you come back to because that's where you're going to be treated, go get a second opinion at a comprehensive cancer center close to home, someplace that will specifically deals with your type of cancer. That's the most important thing you can do.
Susan had brought up the radon issue. I remember a decade ago, there was all this discussion about 10, 15 years ago. Everybody's got to test for radon. Radon is going to give you lung cancer. It's going to give you all sorts of cancers. It's prevalent in the Northern Virginia area. It's prevalent in New Hampshire. It's prevalent in all these areas where they have rock. What happened to radon? We don't even hear about it anymore.
There are organizations that work with it, but yeah, we don't know, and at least within the lung cancer community, we don't know what to point a finger at. We wish that we could point a finger at something for these non-smoking patients. It could be that, but there's, again, going back to the research, there's just not enough research to know. We just don't know, and until we get the funding, we're not going to know.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being on the show. Again, Sammy Hawkins of the Lung Cancer Alliance and Susan Lawrence, thank you for being here. www.lungcanceralliance.org. Check it out. You got a few spare pennies in your pocket. Maybe you want to give them a contribution. It looks to me like they're doing some really good stuff. Thank you again. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.